call this meeting to order. The meeting will occur over Zoom, video, phone, teleconference per the allowance under the Governor's Emergency Order number 12 that waive the requirement of having a quorum of the board physically present for a public meeting. We encourage those who would like to participate to please call the number listed below. We have a public hearing to start our evening off. Mr. Smith?
Yeah, this is for sale of town land. It's a property lot over on Winter Street. Is Tony Randall? No, Tony hasn't made it in yet. He said he was going to call.
Well, wait a minute. I've got more people to admit that just popped up.
Okay.
Not exactly sure. One of them must be David.
Yep.
Rusty just signed in.
Rusty signed in. Which one are you, Rusty? Okay.
Yep.
Is that better? Is that on?
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, Ginger. You know what's cool. You know what's cool.
Okay.
Okay. So a couple weeks ago, in case everyone doesn't remember, Tony Randall's client, or through Tony Randall, approached us about purchasing a town-owned land. It was a property lot off of Winter Street. Tony doing assessment work. His client found this piece of land that used to be owned by the town, is owned by the town, but we didn't really know. And his client has interest in purchasing the lot. We sent this to the planning board per RSA 4114A, and the planning board came back with.
Mr. Smith, may I stop you for a minute?
Yep.
There has been a request that you speak up.
Okay.
In other words, talk louder.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I hear you just fine.
Me as well.
Maybe it's the telephone connections.
Or the volume on someone's computer?
Not mine.
Not mine.
Okay, anyways, I'll do my best to talk louder. That shouldn't be a problem. I've often been told I talk too loud as it is.
No, that's too much.
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, this is the first of two public hearings, and planning board, no issues from the planning board about moving forward with selling this less than an acre of a lot, and it's just the public hearing is to give the public an opportunity and per the statute, and next week, or excuse me, the next meeting, we'll vote on whether or not the selectmen want to sell the land.
Charlie, for the next public hearing, why don't you include the response from the planning board in with the packet?
Okay.
Since that's part of the statute,
Yep.
selling town property. That you need that documentation.
Yeah, I can include it in there.
Well, on July 23rd, 2020, Susan McLeod, the land use assistant for the town, wrote to the Board of Selectmen that at the July 22nd, 2020 meeting of the Ashland Planning Board, Surveyor Anthony Randall presented a site plan for the for the above-mentioned property. The planning board is required to make a recommendation on a proposed sale of town property. They describe the property as being landlocked, is partially in a vegetative wetland. The front edge drops steeply down to meet the wetland portion, and there are existing monitoring wells from previously removed fuel tanks on it. Based on those conditions, the planning board, by a roll call, unanimous vote 3-0, determined the best use of the property is for the town to convey it to a contiguous abutter.
That is correct.
Son of a gun.
Yeah. Just suggested we make it part of the package in case somebody wants to look at it as a standalone document.
Okay. What's next, Charlie?
We close the public hearing.
We
No,
asked,
yes, for our comments.
we asked for comments. Is there anybody present that has a comment? Hearing none. Anybody from the board have a comment? Okay, then I would like to close the public hearing for the sale of property off Winter Street, formerly of the George Campbell estate. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote. Kathleen DeWolf,
Aye.
Alan Silly,
Aye.
Francis Newton,
Aye.
Eli Badger, aye. Okay.
So our second public hearing will be at our next meeting.
On the 17th,
Correct.
okay. The approval of minutes.
I have a couple of corrections. Really minor grammatical things. On line 27, the word ongoing is one word, not hyphenated. On line 35, it says being the permit was incomplete. I would say given that the permit was incomplete. And on page 2, line 41, I would just insert the word and. It said Bob Letourneau and Andy Fitch, and both were received prior to official announcement, or make it a separate sentence. Put a period after Fitch and then say both were received prior to official announcement.
Do I hear any more corrections? Hearing none,
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of July 20th as amended.
I'll second that.
any further discussion? Kathleen DeWolf,
Aye.
Alan Silly,
Aye.
Francis Newton,
Aye.
Eli Badger, aye. New business, Ashland Water and Sewer Asset Management Plan. Let me introduce Jessica Richard. Charlie, you want to set this up for us, or do you want Jessica to do that?
I would defer that to Jess in case she has other things that she wants to show during her presentation.
Okay,
Eli, are you going to put the PowerPoint up or am I going to share?
You know what? Either way, if I can put the PowerPoint
Can you
up,
put it up? That might be easier.
just like this, let me hit my little share button. I really want you all to see my horrible desktop. Okay, so we should be, let me just do a little bit of resizing a couple of things. There we go.
Excellent. Thank you, Eli.
You're welcome.
Slideshow, Eli? So we see
What?
this, can you put it on a slideshow?
Let me see if I can find that itsy bitsy little thing down there.
That's much better, thank you.
Okay. So
Thank
Jess,
you.
you're gonna have to yell.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. So my name's Jessica Richard. I work at Woodard & Curran. I'm a technical manager. And back last year, we completed the water and wastewater asset management plan, which we recently updated to include the septic receiving facility. So Eli, could you go to the next slide?
Absolutely.
So the agenda, we're going to go over what is asset management, what the Ashland asset management planning process was, the level of service goals matrix, the risk assessment, the risk interpretation and action levels, capital outlay, and implementation of the plan. Next slide, please. So EPA's Asset Management Best Practices Guide says that asset management is maintaining a desired level of service for what you want your assets to provide at the lowest life cycle cost. Next slide, please. The benefits of asset management: you make better financial decisions, you meet your regulatory requirements, you reduce the number of emergency repairs that are required, you prioritize the rehabilitation and the replacement cost of your assets. You research cost-effective options. Customers can see that you're spending money efficiently and effectively. And some funding agencies rank applicants higher if they've completed an asset management plan. And in my experience, it's easier to fund projects that are recommended out of a planning document. They're more competitive. So next slide, please. So this is an overview of the process. This is based off of EPA's asset management plan framework. Next slide. So the first thing that we did was we determined the current state of the assets. It's basically, what do you own and what condition is it in? So we conducted an inventory of the assets. We looked at the GIS layers, your MVP software, the information that was in that. We scanned and georeferenced some of your record drawings, and we had discussions with your staff. After that, we determined the useful life that we do using useful life tables or decay curves. And then we determine the asset value and the replacement cost. Next slide, please. Okay, so the level of service. This is determined that what is the sustainable level of service based on regulations, customer service and stakeholder demands, your actual performance, and the capabilities of your assets. AWWA has an annual utility benchmarking survey, and these goals don't need to be static. You're going to you can go to the next slide. You can add goals, replace goals. This is meant to be a living document. But here I just took a snapshot of the customer service goals because those are the easiest to think about. Your goal is to respond to water or sewer customers within the next business day. So your benchmark is within a day, and then you track that. We met that 95% of the time. Your next year, what is your goal within a day? And you track that, and you see if you're falling behind in any of these areas. And then what do you need to do in order to make sure that you're able to meet your goals? Next slide, please.
It's a little bit too hard.
So then we go and we determine your critical assets. So the consequence of failure, That is based on the asset's function, role, and its location, and it's ranked on a scale of 1, which is very low, and 5, which is very high. So basically, what are the impacts if that asset fails? Higher scoring assets are the more critical assets in the system. You know, if you're located next to a water body, what is the consequence of failure if that asset, you know, if raw sewage runs into a stream? The likelihood of failure is based on the asset's condition, its performance, and its reliability. And again, it's ranked on the same scale. And during the risk assessment, we prioritize your infrastructure assets by assessing each for the criticality and the vulnerability of failure. So this is the consequence of failure scoring. This is important because the function, role, and location of your asset will not change based on its location. So what is the consequence of failure? If it does fail, it's number 5 and it's next to a river, you know, environmental and regulatory. You can see that you could have a regulatory action. If it's low, nothing, just minor damage to the environment or non-compliance is unlikely. Plant impact. There's no workaround. That's if it's very high, but if it's very low, no consequence. You have full redundancy, there will be no impact. So next slide. So likelihood of failure. This is based on, is it at the end of its useful life? The performance, is it an undersized asset, or is it the reliability? So, if it's brand new asset, performing well and highly reliable, it's ranks as a 1. If you have reliability issues with it, it can rank, in the 3, 2, 3, 4s. And if it's at the end of its useful life, it can rank as a 5. But if it's close to its useful life and it's performing well, so there's a ranking for all of this. So next slide, please. So this is the risk interpretation. So anything that is on the consequence of failure side, where you see regular monitoring at the 3 level or above, we recommend regular monitoring for that asset. Next slide, please. So for your sewer mains, the consequence of failures due to the location, you have about, so very high risk and high risk, sorry, I'm having a hard time seeing on my screen, this is due to the lack of accessibility. Many of the pipes were crossing bridges, rivers, or are located on private land. So that's why the consequence of failure score on your sewer mains is so high. But when you go to the likelihood of failure, 73% are low or very low, and that's because of they're newer. And we did call out that pipe spanning the Squam River on the overpass in Depot Street, which conveys all of the flow from the area, I believe it's south of Squam River, and that was considered a priority project. So next slide, please. So your water main consequence of failure, that's fairly evenly distributed. The high-risk pipes are your cast iron pipes that are original to your system. Again, on your likelihood of failure, it was high-risk cast iron pipes within areas that are designated due to their location, private lands near water. We also identified some hydrants without break-off valves. Those are, if something does happen to those hydrants, you wouldn't be able to stop the water. High pressure water would be released. Next slide, please. So these are your pump stations and your wastewater treatment facilities, the consequence of failure and your likelihood of failure. We evaluated 25 pump stations, including 22 grinder pump stations. 20% of the pump station assets and the wastewater assets were high or major consequence of failures. And that's 3 pump stations that require automatic transfer switches that need to be addressed. You had 12 wastewater assets that needed to be addressed: the lagoon diffuser system, the blower MCC panel, the plant automatic transfer switch, and I believe the generator as well. On the likelihood of failure, 90% of the pump station assets were in fair or better condition, and 80% of the wastewater treatment facility assets are in fair or better condition as well. Next slide, please. So the next task that we do is determine the minimum life cycle cost. And that is, what are the costs to rehabilitate the critical assets, repair your critical assets, or replace your critical assets? And then we look, are there better ways to optimize the way you're doing things through operation and maintenance, personnel, or capital budget accounts? Next slide, please. So this looks at what a typical capital improvement plan is versus an enhanced capital improvement plan. Your typical capital improvement plan is really your wish list. You know, whatever project pops up, there's no planning behind it. It's just your wish list, and that's that model. Your enhanced model is your risk-based. It allows for consistent and equitable project prioritization. Next slide, please. And then we do a long-term funding plan. Do we have enough funding to maintain the assets for a required level of service? And is your rate structure adequate for the system's long-term needs? Next slide, please. So these were the recommendations that came out of the asset management plan. Short-term costs are 0 to 2 years, and intermediate were 3 to 5 years. These are sewer mains, manholes. We highly recommended an SSES program just because there wasn't much information on the sewer system. Water mains, those are those old cast iron, the hydrants that we talked about, the wastewater assets, and then the pump station assets. Next slide, please. And I think this next slide comes in twice, so I apologize for that. So this is just rounding up those costs. These are your short-term costs for utilities and your wastewater treatment plant, and that's $2 million approximately, and then your intermediate costs are approximately $3 million. Next slide, I think, is the same, so you might want to skip that one. Oh, thank you. And then how do you optimize and leverage funding? And so one of the ways that we did that was we applied for the facility analysis. The project cost was $75,000, 100% principal forgiveness. So looking at different funding mechanisms, funding strategies, the best way to get the most for the least amount. Next slide, please. And then we did a water and sewer rate analysis. The goal of the rate study was to ensure that you have revenue stability, revenue sufficiency, you distribute your costs equitably, you maintain an adequate capital and operational reserve, and your rate structure is easy to understand and administer. Equitable is if you're using it more, you pay more because you're putting more of a burden on the system. So Ashland's Water and Sewer Capital Improvement Plan, as you saw before, water systems approximately 2.4 million water mains and hydrants, and then the sewer systems approximately 2.8. That's the SSES sewer mains, wastewater treatment plant, lagoons, and pump stations. Next slide. So the rate model has I guess it's a page where you can go in and adjust what projects. So right here are all the projects that that were recommended as part of the asset management plan, and it allows you to, let's say you go ahead with that facility analysis for the lagoons. Once that project goes forward, you can delete that project, move your projects up, add new projects, or let's say right now, with everything going on, you need to put that facility analysis off. You can change the planning period. So you can take that planning period and say, we're going to go out to 2022, and you can see how that's going to impact your user rates. You can move your projects around just to see how much you can get, how much you can fund, and what the impact on the user rates is. Next slide. So the implementation of an asset management plan, staff training, public outreach, maintenance program updates, and then leverage funding sources. So we put all of the work, instead of putting in an MVP, because you no longer have MVP, everything's in the spreadsheets. It can be easily uploaded into another asset management software. You can add any maintenance, you can use those worksheets right now while you don't have an asset management plan software. And then we also recommend leveraging additional funding sources. You've used the New Hampshire DES SRF program, that's principal forgiveness and low interest. Northern Borders Regional Commission you've also used, and then also USDA rural development is another option. Next slide, please. Oh, that's it. Thank you. Let me know, do you have any questions?
Jess, what does SSES stand for?
Sanitary Sewer Evaluation Survey.
Thank you.
Okay.
If I can have just a minute of your time. I'm Sharon Knoll with New Hampshire DES. We provided the funding for this program. Eli, it's great to see you still involved in town. We want to commend you guys for taking on asset management. It's hard to hear the numbers, but when you start to really, I see you nodding, when you really start to understand the value of your assets and what those assets provide to the town, then you can start to use this data to really manage those assets more effectively and take care of them into the future. Dan, Dan's with DES as well.
Hi, Dan.
Hey.
How's your cat?
Oh yeah, you saw her. She was sticking her nose, and I guess she wanted to be on camera. But yeah, as Jess was saying, this is a living document, and we encourage you to continue to review and update this asset management program, so you can continue to use this as a data-driven decision-making tool down the road, as well as taking advantage of additional asset management programs for stormwater and building on existing asset management plans.
You've got to thank Alan Silly and Dave Toth for a lot of hard work in getting us up to this point.
Yeah, it's never a one person. It takes a team. It takes a village. One of the things I know Jess had mentioned CUPS in the report as a software option. Unfortunately, CUPS is no longer supported by EPA. It's not going to be updated anymore. It also does not have a GIS component to it, but there are some other free softwares available and low-cost softwares. Just included some of the low-cost ones in the report. We've also had communities use all the Google tools with Google Earth, Google Maps,
Google Forms.
Yeah, Google Docs. That's worked really well. If you have you've got the ArcGIS license, I believe, or Esri, you can.
QGIS is another free program you can use.
Yes, we have right now, right, Rusty? We have QGIS.
Right. Yeah.
And, and you're looking for getting ArcGIS.
Correct.
Okay, and there's a lot you can do. I think just mentioned in the report, Survey 123, that's, we can connect Rusty with other communities that are using ArcGIS with Survey 123, and so they can learn from each other.
Okay.
So once you figure out what you want to use, let us know and we can start connecting you with, get you some assistance from other people.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah. And like Dan mentioned, there's another, Ashland's eligible for another $30,000 of loan forgiveness for including stormwater assets. So you can build on the platform you started here. You've also done the drinking water. You can do the drinking water grant repeatedly to continue to build on that asset management.
We like that.
Yeah. Yep. It is competitive, so, but it does help. He looks at, it's Luis Adorno, and he does take into consideration if you've done wastewater and stormwater, when you come back in for another loan or another grant.
Yes.
he'll look at that, and if you're using it and you're updating it on a regular basis, that's a bonus. And actually, speaking of using it and updating, as you go forward and get more loans from Clean Water SRF, one of the requirements of those loans is fiscal sustainability planning. If you are keeping your asset management program up to date, you're using it as the tool it's intended to be, we can certify that you've met the FSP requirements, and that's one piece of the loan that's taken care of. So that's
Good.
another incentive to keep
That's-
using it.
That's very good information for us to keep going and doing what we've been doing.
Right. So do you guys have any questions for us?
Charlie does. Go ahead.
I was on mute. Jess, you said short term, 2 to 3 years. We have to come up with an estimated $2 million. Is that correct? I don't. Did she hear me?
I don't know whether she's listening to you.
Sorry,
or not.
I was muted.
Uh,
So those are the recommendations. Obviously, you can really only do as much as you can afford to do, but it gives you a way to plan for future projects. Some of these projects you may be able to break down into phases and go forward with them. You can play around with it in the rate model. So it just gives you an idea. I mean, those are the recommendations from an engineering standpoint, but obviously you can only afford so much, and so can the users. So,
Right.
and it's a balance that every community has to deal with.
User rates are typically too low.
Yes.
And that's something that if you can get your users used to annual increases in their rates, that can be a lot less painful than going along with steady rates and then a huge jump.
Mr. Smith and Mr. Cross are working on that. We've already had one substantial rate increase to bring us closer, but I think they monitor everything fairly well.
Good.
And I agree with Sharon. In our experience, when communities do user rate increases regularly and they're small, they're easier to pass. When you do a large one, it makes it very difficult.
Yep. Okay, I don't want to cut anybody off or stop people from discussing, but people seem to have slowed down again.
Well, we haven't discussed this in a while. I was ready for this presentation in December. And so,
Things happen, Kathleen.
so the board hasn't discussed most of these things in quite a while, and I realized listening, it's time to we gotta start discussing this, at least probably one meeting a month for a while, especially since there's money involved and we have to plan accordingly moving forward.
I would just like to say we ought to really seriously consider applying asset management principles to other areas of the town. For example, DPW. Asset management is a very logical way to take a look at what we have, what we need, what needs, et cetera, et cetera. It's working well for water and sewer. We should discuss it for other areas of the town.
And for the electric department too.
I think Mr. Cool has already mentioned doing an asset management program.
If I can interject on that, one of the things we have seen from pulling the highway department in to a water and sewer asset management program is you're now pulling in roads and drainage.
Yep.
And that level of communication is usually siloed in towns, and they don't talk to each other as often as they should. So it really helps with planning paving projects. It's like, oh, you're going to reconstruct this road. Well, my sewer's run has issues there, or the water line is leaking. Let's fix that when that road is torn up and not tear up that brand new pavement 2 years from now. That really gets the users kind of revved up.
That upsets them.
Yes, it does, reasonably. But having those conversations up front, everybody starts to see how they can work together better. And it's just a better cost-effective use of taxpayer dollars.
Yeah.
I believe Rusty and DPW Superintendent Craig have been working to make sure their projects are planned accordingly, and they share some of the same equipment. Am I correct, Rusty?
Yes, you are.
That's
But
great.
That's communication. I mean, I would like to see written plans like we have for water and sewer. The communication obviously is vital. I appreciate the fact that they're doing that, but I think we need to really implement asset management plans to these other areas.
Not just the verbal interaction that this is on paper, so it can be drafted and analyzed. More work for Mr. Smith to initiate.
Well, let me ask Sharon, how do we go about doing that, Sharon? I mean, earlier you said there's other examples of communities that,
So it's the exact same way you started the wastewater one. It's you put in a pre-application in June. You can go ahead and get everything in order prior to that so that you're ready to go. But it's not competitive for the stormwater, just like it wasn't for the wastewater. It's the same guidance document for wastewater and stormwater. So it's basically the same program, but now so you've got the foundation laid. So really more of that 30,000 can be spent on identifying where are your assets, what shape are they in. For stormwater, a lot of towns, most towns don't really know where their stormwater assets are or what they are. So you can spend a lot more time really identifying what are the drainage issues, where does drainage need help.
Already got that document.
Fran?
Dave would like to make a comment. Okay.
Well, I want to make a few comments. One is that when Eli and Alan and I were commissioners at Water and Sewer, we went from having nothing, no GIS, no computer maintenance, no asset management plan, to where they are now in about 6 years. We didn't know where all our assets were. We were constantly behind, fixing problems rather than planning for the future. And so slowly we identified all of our assets. We put them in the GIS system. And I have to say that DES provided us with the training so that we would understand what asset management is and how important it is. And so we all went to training sessions and learned about this. And through the training and through the engineering support we got from Woodard and Kern, we were able to reach this point. And the importance of it, I think, is pretty clear. But for ratepayers and for taxpayers, the problem that we face is that all all of our assets are so expensive. And, you know, a fire truck is $450,000 to $500,000. A plow is $80,000 to $90,000. And so if you do not plan for those things, then you know, you're in for large tax increases, large unplanned for tax increases um, that happen at random rather than planning for those things and building that into the tax structure so that you're able to accomplish these things with as little time as possible. So I do commend my colleagues, Eli and Alan, all the work that they did in getting water and sewer to this point, and of course Rusty for all of the hard work that he's done down.
Okay, any other comments?
Thanks for your comments, Dave.
Thank you, Dave. Moving on.
A lot of work ahead of us.
Okay.
Thank you,
we-
everyone.
Thanks, Jess, for putting that together.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Sharon. Good to see you, Sharon. I know we'll be in touch with our other SRFs.
Yes, we will.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that energy project.
We got the RFQs on Friday, and Rusty and I are about ready to look through these. So we're not done yet.
Good.
Thank you for your input from DES.
And I should bring that up for the public too, is we have two more SRFs going out there. One's a facility analysis on the lagoons and another is an energy audit. So kind of sort of taking the next step with our asset management, just a little bit different than just the water and sewer lines.
It's the energy audit implementation, right?
Yes.
Yep. So, yep, and we'll work with New Hampshire Electric Co-op to get their incentives as well as the loan forgiveness for us.
Thank you.
Make it as cheap as possible so you can work on the other projects.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. Moving on. Access AV proposal installation of microphone and cameras at water and sewer conference room.
Yes, that is me. This is a request. I would start at the beginning, a request to expend from the capital reserve just in case. Right now, there's a lot of funding out there for the GOFER program, which is Governor's Office for Emergency Relief and Recovery. Now, this is grant funding that municipalities were allocated. The state received $1.25 billion when it comes to the CARES Act and COVID funding. The governor's, this GOFER program allocated $40 million to all of the municipalities. We were allocated $49,501. And it's based off of population as a percentage of the 40 million. In the funding, they don't send us all the money. Let me be clear about that. It's 49,000 that we can ask to be reimbursed for any unanticipated expense that is because of COVID. And this request, in my opinion, is an eligible expense based off of the criteria, as we wouldn't have had to make this expense otherwise if COVID didn't happen. Part of this expense is to get public bodies to meet at a public meeting. And then the other half is for public health and safety. And what I mean by that is I'm requesting to put cameras into the water and sewer conference room. So all the public bodies will meet in one central location from the planning board, trustees, budget committee, selectmen, am I missing someone? Conservation Commission, Heritage Commission, even though these don't really meet, and 4th of July Committee. The camera setup will also have Zoom, so those that don't feel safe or have concerns about their health, it will be live broadcasted and aired over Zoom. Okay. I got 3 proposals from Access AV. We worked with PBTV on these to give you a breakdown. There's best, better, and good. I think we need to go with the best, and here's why. Because it's 2 cameras, and most importantly with it is the microphone. The microphone would be installed in a tile above, whereas if we didn't want to pay the extra funding for that, we would have microphones on the table, there'd be wires, and people would be passing the microphones to talk. It's just easier to go for the microphone in the ceiling. In my opinion, we need to go for this and not look back. And what I mean by that, this is a necessity, I think, for our public bodies, but it's also for the public, so that the public can still have access to our public meetings and they will be able to participate. Even if it's remotely, they'll still be able to participate. So I am asking that if we happen to be reimbursed through the gopher, that we take it out of capital reserve funds. Our building and maintenance and grounds repairs capital reserve funds.
How much do we have in that capital reserve?
Right now, I wrote it at the bottom. There's an estimated about 40,000. That doesn't include interest. And we will be putting 10,000 in December.
Oh,
That's
like in last December.
the capital reserve funds. Once they're approved at a town vote in March, we have to fund them by December 15th.
What are the odds of our getting the grant? You know?
It's good. We're seeing that a lot of communities aren't actually applying for these funds. Right now, last I checked, there's 40 million, but in total, only 3 million has been spent. And because of that, that's why we're seeing that the governor's office is extending the ability for us to expend. Before it was September, now it's been extended till October. So we had a department head meeting last week, and we were brainstorming on ideas on how we can expend things related to COVID, because if we don't, we're going to lose it. We're going to lose it. Then it comes out of the budget.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so much so that Catherine, what was it? Well, you back on this. We think we might be able to get reimbursed for salaries. She said for all of fire and PD for salaries. You know, they gave the stipend, but now we're hearing it might be reimbursing for salaries for that period because people just aren't using it. And again, if we don't use it, it goes back to the federal government.
It strikes me that this is a good idea, Charlie.
Nothing ventured, nothing gained. So we might as well get the paperwork filled out and send it in as soon as we can.
And I would like to make the motion that if the expense to install a microphone and video camera at Water and Sewer Conference Room is not reimbursed through the Gopher program, then the sum of $14,476 shall be expended from the Building and Grounds Maintenance and Repairs Capital Reserve Fund.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Kathleen DeWolf,
Aye.
Alan Silly,
Aye.
Francis Newton,
Aye.
Eli Badger says aye.
By the way, last Monday, Plymouth Plymouth Select Board had a public hearing, and I believe that is the setup they had.
Oh,
They had somebody at the town office,
mhm,
managing
mhm.
the hosting. They looked like they had somebody there taking minutes. They have a large town office, so they could spread out. But members of the public who want to participate in the public hearing did it via Zoom, but it would switch back and forth between the cameras in the town hall and the people zooming in on the meeting.
Great. I'm personally excited for this. Andrew, are you there? Can you speak to any of that? Mhm.
Okay.
Thanks for your help on, Andrew helped me with this. We did a walkthrough together. Andrew also looked at the proposal. I'm not as technically sound when it comes to this, but he felt it was, you know, it was what we needed, right, Andrew? Mhm. Yep, yep. And this will really help going forward too. You know, like I said, we'll be able to, when we're all back to meeting together, this will help all of us with our live streaming. We're going to get internet to the building. So my goal is we'll just walk into the room, flip the switch, and then we're on for the most part. Right, Andrew? Mhm. Yep, yep.
Okay.
It's awesome. So,
Don't oversell it, Charlie.
I know. Gotta calm down a little bit. Huh?
Okay. Moving on is,
Yeah, the next one's me too.
Yeah.
Sorry, Eli, go ahead.
go ahead.
The Ashland Electric 2006 Chevy Colorado pickup truck has seen better days. It won't pass the inspection.
Okay, it's a 2006.
Yep.
So it's 14 years old.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, the bottom of it is rusted completely. The mechanic can't do any more to save it for it to pass inspection. So the guys recommended that we send it to the scrapyard.
Of which we'll get between $100 and $150 for.
Yep. I mean, we've taken everything out of it. The toolboxes, as you can see in my write-up, we took the toolbox out, any salvageable equipment. So,
Well, being the proud owner of a 2007 pickup that has a completely rusted bottom that didn't pass inspection, and now we don't know what to do with it, I think we need to get rid of it.
mhm.
Mhm.
Okay,
I just need a vote.
you need a vote.
We need to make a motion to have the town manager sign the title and send the Ashland Electric 2006 Chevy Colorado pickup truck to the scrapyard.
Do I hear a second?
Second?
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Kathleen DeWolf? Kathleen?
Aye.
Alan Silly?
Aye.
Francis Newton?
Aye.
Eli Badger says aye. Now, the next up is a little bit of old business. Been informed that we did not actually vote to accept Jamie Lyford's resignation that he sent by email in June. I would like to have a motion to officially accept his resignation.
I'll make a motion to accept the resignation of Jamie Lyford.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Kathleen DeWolf?
Aye.
Alan Silly,
Aye.
Francis Newton,
Aye.
Eli Badger, aye. Moving on. Select board items.
Eli, do you
Yes.
want to officially announce that the position is vacant now? And at the last
I have-
meeting, that's what we
Okay,
we would do, I guess. So this is the official announcement.
this is the official announcement that we have a vacancy on the Board of Selectmen and that we are accepting applications
Or letters of interest.
or letters of interest until our meeting on the 17th.
Do you want me to schedule those interviews for the 17th with the 2 applicants we previously received?
Yes.
Yes, we'll do that.
All right.
I have to admit Craig Moore. Done. Okay. Welcome, Craig.
No, thank you.
Okay. We
Okay,
have,
the property tax map, capital reserve funds.
yep,
Originally, I requested an expenditure of $6,000 from the CRF. Today, I received another invoice from CI Technologies for $4,500. So I'm asking that the board change the motion from 6,000 to 10,500. So we can process the check and get reimbursed.
do I hear?
Where do we stand with the project, Charlie? Just,
They are 70% done.
okay. In that case, I'll make a motion to expend $10,500 from the property tax map capital reserve fund for payment towards the town parcel mapping project.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Do I hear any further discussion? Hearing none. Kathleen DeWolf,
Aye.
Alan Silly,
Aye.
Francis Newton,
Aye.
Eli Badger, aye. Okay. Ashland Electric Department Office Operations.
Okay, being that I oversee the day-to-day operations of all of the town, all the departments, it's my recommendation that we move the utility clerk currently down at the highway garage or utility building up to the town office. The building has been closed since March because of COVID. Open it back up to have that position. I am not comfortable with that position being alone, not only for safety, but I'm finding for support reasons. It's staff, the position is there by themselves, answering the phone, maintaining the front counter, all that stuff. The position needs to be up in the town office with other staff and support, as it is it's an administrative position. Previously, we had our financial operations that were in there. We no longer conduct the financial operations in regards to accounts payables. Recently, finance up in the town office completed the merge, as I like to call it, the merge, from having the financial software be under QuickBooks at the utility with the utilities, water, sewer, and electric, and now it's all under the general fund and through our BMSI software. So this transition would not happen probably until mid-September. We'd like to get notification out to all of the utility customers that that's what we're going to do. We need a little bit of time to move some things in the office up here. We do have the room to make the move. We are in the works of installing a Dropbox for customers up here. Operations will run better, I believe, with that position being in the office instead of being down there alone.
Okay.
I don't know how I've heard a few from a selectmen, as if I can just go ahead and do this. I've heard from others that don't completely agree with it. I don't know if this is something that you want to vote on. Is it a consensus? Is there complete objection? Please
Well,
let me know I'm here.
We can,
Put this up for discussion.
I'd like to make a motion that we do in fact move the utilities office manager, or whatever her title is, up to the town hall. It makes perfect sense to me to consolidate operations for all the reasons that you mentioned.
we have,
I'll second that.
okay. Any discussion among the board about bringing a finance person up to the town office?
Eli?
Mr. Silly?
I am not going to argue the point very strongly because I know exactly where this is headed. But it's my feeling that there are more negatives than pluses in doing this. I can agree on some points that Charlie has made and others I don't.
Alan, I hate to put you on the spot, but what negative aspects do you see?
I'm not going to get into it. It's just a waste of time. I'm just throwing my opinion out there before we get a vote.
Waste of time. Okay, I'm gonna ponder that for a while.
Okay,
I believe this is a management decision,
yeah,
and Karen needs, the staff can work together. They have support there. They'll have Charlie there. The town office is now the hub of finance, and it makes perfect sense to have everybody in one place, so everybody can work together. Charlie can't be in two places at once. He can't be down at the utility building managing the utility finances and be at the town office managing the town's finances. And as a woman who has worked in the office, support usually is needed in some way, shape, or form. And I'm very worried about the safety issue of a single female employee being in an office alone. So I'm very concerned about safety issues. It's going to be a change. People, but like everything else, people will eventually adjust, and I think it just makes sense.
any further discussion? Hearing none. Kathleen DeWolf,
Aye.
Alan Silly,
Nay.
Francis Newton,
Aye.
Eli Badger, aye. Charlie, you have our answer.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda was dates to review new town employee personnel handbook. This Vice Chairman DeWolf put this on the agenda. Before I started our meeting, Kathleen, I did receive the draft copy from the attorney. So I will be sending that out to the selectmen. With that being said, are there dates Kathleen wants to get together to discuss this further?
Now,
Would this be separate from a regular meeting work session?
It should be, because I believe Naomi is willing to participate. So it's probably when she's available. She's still working from home. Do you know?
Part-time,
Part-time?
yes. Yeah.
'Cause we'll probably have some legal questions that she'll have to answer for us. And this will be a brand new document. It will replace every other version before. And we probably should address this before we start with the budget
Okay,
process.
let's talk about our availability. Alan, what's your availability like during the day?
Anytime.
Okay,
Me too.
Me too.
and for the most part, so am I. Um,
I will forewarn you, it is a very lengthy document.
yes, we know. Some of us have read it.
Might
Yes.
need a week at least.
No.
Um,
Some of it is standard, that is federal law or union contractual issues. There's some policy that we can tweak. And just hope the final version isn't all the many different colors that the other draft was.
We just need the color code.
Or, yeah, or provide us with a color code. I believe you said some sections were completely eliminated because
Yeah.
they were no longer needed.
It's, when during the day do we want to start trying to do this next week?
I have,
got it down to 42 pages, she told me.
wow, because it was 90 something.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
that's a
so
start.
when do we want to start doing this?
My calendar's free, so if we want to make a plan for next week.
Can we find out if we're all open,
Mhm.
let's find out when Naomi is open, because we still have to work around Charlie's schedule too.
Well, I'm meeting with Naomi on this coming Wednesday, so that
Okay,
So you can ask her tomorrow.
Mhm.
Wednesday.
Wednesday. I mean, I can ask her tomorrow too.
Oh, that's right. Today's Monday.
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
This Wednesday. But
This Wednesday.
Okay. Why
Eli,
don't you work? Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I've just been told that Wednesdays are out this week and next week for me.
Okay.
I-
That's fine.
I just checked the calendar.
I heard her.
Yeah.
I heard your calendar.
Mhm.
Okay,
So Charlie,
next
if you
Monday.
can come up with some dates that are viable for everybody, why don't you get back to us, since we've all said that we can do it? And as long as we can post them for a meeting, they'll be fine.
Yeah, I'll talk to Naomi and see if there's a couple dates that work for her and how we can get them in with everyone's schedule here.
Okay.
Now, is this a public meeting or a non-meeting?
I'll ask her. I mean,
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, I
ask
lean
her.
toward a meeting because it's legal advice when it comes to the legality of our personnel policy. I mean, there's a
We
lot
can
of
try. Yeah.
legal work in there.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we wouldn't have to post it.
Mhm. And
If she-
I mean,
if she deems
if
that
we do,
it is
we
a
do.
non-meeting.
We just have to post it as a non-meeting.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, no big deal.
Craig, is Craig here to talk to us about something? He hasn't told you?
Not that
Craig,
I'm-
are you here for something?
Oh,
You
he
just
must have-
like to have Monday nights with the crew?
Well, I have one more item, Mr. Badger.
Okay,
Recently we got sent a right to know request about a couple of our meetings. And one of those was about non-public minutes that were sealed on 6/1/2020. I had sent those to the Board of Selectmen for consideration about unsealing them.
okay. This is,
It was in regards to a new hire.
a potential hire at the time.
At the time, it was potential. Generally, for privacy reasons, we usually go ahead and seal those because, you know, if you make the offer to someone and if they don't accept, and it kind of gets out there, it doesn't always look well. So for privacy, we go ahead and seal them. I don't think
Yeah.
there's any reason that we need
We
to
can
keep-
unseal them.
Yeah, so I just need a vote of the board. Assuming everyone saw them and we're all on the same page.
Make a motion, we unseal the minutes.
Do I hear a second?
Second that.
Any further discussion? Kathleen DeWolf,
Aye.
Alan Silly,
Aye.
Francis Newton,
Aye.
Eli Badger says aye. The next one, Charlie? You said two.
Nope.
You did
That's
say,
it. What we had 3 non-publics that night. Only 1 was sealed, correct?
Yes.
But the other 2 are not.
okay.
You don't have to vote on.
And so you don't have to go back on something like this, something to consider that other municipalities do is when they're sealed, you just
Seal
make,
them for a specific time.
that's it.
Okay.
Yes.
In a year, we unseal them in a year. By then, you should be good to go.
Okay. What do we have coming up on the 17th?
Well, let me see here.
Preview.
I think we have New Hampshire Department of Transportation giving a presentation about painting the bridge.
Okay. Anything else of major import?
Yes, we've got perhaps the trustees of the trust funds. I talked to Amanda Loud today.
Scribner trustees.
Scribner trustees,
Mhm.
but that's still up in the air. Right,
Well-
Amanda?
Yeah, I mean, I won't know I will not know how the board votes until the board meets. And
Okay.
the board meets on Monday.
I have an email from Ms. Loud, who would like to have, about the trustees of the trust fund.
Yes.
She'd like to have a non-public.
Well, the way I worded that email was that I would like, we trustees of the trust fund voted that we would like to meet with the Board of Selectmen. Now, the trustees of the trust fund thought it would be most appropriate in a non-public session. However,
That's what I
that is
have
not our
here.
decision to make. It is the decision of the board.
That's what I'm trying to get around to.
Okay.
Okay? So we've been asked if we will meet with them. What is our pleasure?
I think we could. Don't see any problem with it.
You could, but I don't see any reason to go into non-public.
May I speak?
Yeah.
The reason that we as a board felt that it may be most appropriate in a non-public session is because the trustees of the trust funds, as we have begun to dig into Ashland's trusts and our duties, is we have concerns as a board about the management of gifts to the town of Ashland. It has nothing to do with gifting to the town of Ashland. It has to do with the management of those gifts once they are made. And we are concerned that there is a possibility of incurring reputation damaging reputation, and that is not our desire. We have a greater purpose, and that is to discuss how Ashland is managing the gifts, which we think is something that the Board of Selectmen need to look into and establish some clearer policies.
I'll look into it and get back to everyone.
Please do. But I think that we
Well,
can
I
set
get
up,
legal opinion on that one.
a meeting with the trustees of the trust fund on the 17th. Is that acceptable?
This same night as the Scribners? It's fine with us, I'm just clarifying.
Yes, Mr. Silly.
I'm going to object that we do this.
Okay. A reason?
It's not our responsibility.
Okay.
If I may may I speak?
Not now.
Okay.
I'm asking my fellow board members. Anybody else want to weigh in from the board?
I'm confused about responsibility.
It's the trustees' job to do whatever they have to do. They do not need our advice.
According to what statute is that?
I don't have one. I'm just saying. It's not in our purview to oversee them.
Under what statute?
Well, why don't you find one for us then?
It's not my question. I'm not the
I
one.
don't need one.
Okay,
My opinion.
okay. Then maybe it'll have to be a non-public. But we'll let Charlie run that by legal.
I think that would be a wise thing.
It may not be our responsibility, but I think as the select board, we have probably an obligation to at least know what's going on.
Well, for one thing, we are going to be accepting a donation shortly of a playground, and that's our responsibility according to by statute. And that's a donation.
And we have accepted gifts in the past, so
Yeah, yes.
just to know how it's being managed.
Yeah, we might have to develop a policy, a written policy to follow. So it's the start of a conversation. If we don't start a conversation, it never happens. But if it strays into any area, we'll make sure we'll have legal advise us what can and can't be discussed.
I think. Okay. Charlie, you will get advice for us.
Yes.
Okay. So we're meeting with Ms. Loud.
Well, that was my question. If you're going to consult legal about what can and cannot be discussed, I would prefer not to meet as a board with the Board of Selectmen until after we have received those guidelines so that we can adhere to what we can and cannot say.
That makes
So-
sense.
Till we
Fine.
trustees have received those guidelines.
So if we meet in September, it would still work?
Yeah, I don't believe that this needs to be, this isn't a we need to meet yesterday kind of issue. That all gifts are made to the town, and they're made in that sense to the Board of Selectmen. They're made to the town, and the Board of Selectmen represents the town. So,
Fine. September. Our second meeting in September.
perfect. Thank you very much.
I have a question about the Scribners. Why do you want to meet?
We
Why do the Scribners want to meet with us?
because, well, and I can get the paperwork to you if we, on Monday, a week from today, do vote to seek discussion with the Board of Selectmen on this matter. The oil tank at the library has two pinhole leaks in its fill tube and I just got the paperwork from Pimmy Fuels today describing that. And so depending upon what decision, and we've also had bids from two different plumbing companies on replacing the oil tank and everything. So depending upon what route we as a board on a week from today, on the 10th, decide to take, we may need to discuss this with the Board of Selectmen because the BOS does own the Scribner building. It's a
Okay.
town-owned property.
Fine.
And I'm just not sure, I may be calling Charlie or sending an email Tuesday morning, a week from tomorrow morning, saying, no, we don't need to meet with you, or I may be saying yes, and then by Wednesday, getting all the paperwork to you.
Thank you. Okay. Does anybody have anything else?
In that case, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion about adjourning? Hearing none. Kathleen DeWolf,
Aye.
Alan Silly,
Aye.
Francis Newton,
Aye.
Eli Badger says aye. Thank you for joining us.